when there's a purpose, when there's an impact component to stuff, people generally want to be more involved in it, but I was more inspired to grow it. When it was free and for serving us, it was okay. I didn't put a lot of attention and time and effort to it. When it was for the kids, and I started thinking about how many kids I could help get through sport every single month by just putting more people in that room, I got excited again. And the burnout that I had and that exhaustion that I created for myself chasing financial freedom changed when I realized it became about the impact I can make in the world, not about how much money I could have.
How on earth can you make an amazing income so you can make an amazing impact? How do you go big to give big? That's what we're going to be talking about today. We're joined by Randy Molland. Now, Randy is the visionary founder of the Go Big to Give Big brand. They've got an incredible podcast, an amazing community. He's an avid endurance athlete, and he's got a commitment to learning how to push the boundaries, not only in his physical, but also his business life. He's on a mission to inspire as many business owners as possible to go bigger with their dreams so that they can give bigger with their profits. And that's really in alignment with us here. And we think that's absolutely fantastic. One of his favorite quotes, of course, is money doesn't change people. It just exposes who they really are. You know, I've heard that quote before from someone else. His name's Jayson Lowe. He's with us here today on the podcast, as he always is. And we're excited, Randy, about you being here. You've had an amazing journey. You're a real estate investor. You've created one of the #1 real estate masterminds in all of Canada. You've got an incredible story. And so we're excited to have you here to share a little bit about your journey. Tell us a little bit about some of the, as we were saying before the cameras turned on, 2x4 moments that have happened in your life that have led you to push through, persevere, and move forward in a positive way so that you can really make an impact in the world. So we're excited to have you.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here, guys. Thank you so much. That was a great intro. I loved it. I'm fired up. Let's do this.
Okay, so let's start with outside of tripping over power cords and knocking everything off your desk and being in a lot of pain before starting the show. Talk to us about what your perspective is on the difference between being great and elite.
That's an awesome question and something I study a lot of. I love sports. I'm a sports guy, and there's great athletes and there's elite athletes. The elites are people that you just know they're willing to work harder. They think differently. They operate differently. When you think Kobe Bryant, you think, this guy's brain just saw the court differently and was able to play on a different level. There's great players out there that can make the plays, and you can teach them how to do it. But the elites, it's something that you can't explain. And I know Richard and I are in a common mastermind that's with visionary entrepreneurs only. And those visionary entrepreneurs just see business a little bit differently than the everyday person. There's a lot of business owners out there that are having great success and are doing great. But to me, the elite is someone that can just see the game a little bit differently and be able to execute on that and step into that greatness and lean heavy on it, to be able to achieve so much more than just what the average or I'll say great other people are able to do.
Love that. Yeah. And it's, I think that one of the things that always comes up for me too, is that people who are great want to surround themselves with people who are elite. And people who are elite don't want to be around anyone else who isn't.
That's it. That's 100%
or who isn't aspiring to be. And the reason that comes up for me is that when we connect with fellow entrepreneurs who really aspire to that and recognize that they themselves don't even realize what their potential actually is, that when you go into a mastermind type setting, so the mastermind that you've curated, I would wager that there are people that are a part of that mastermind who are there because they know who isn't going to be there.
That's it.
Would that be a fair statement?
Yeah, 100% is a 100% statement. That's part of the reason why I've invested so much into my personal development is quite a few years ago, I was investing, $20,000 a year to be a part of a mastermind down in the States in California. I'm a Canadian business owner. That's kind of rare, as you see in business in Canada, not a lot of people go down to the States to learn business. And one of the things that I realized down there is that I was willing to pay for my friends. And that's how I kind of put myself into a bit of an elite category. Is like when you start hanging out with people that are willing to spend $20,000 a year to be a part of a mastermind to learn business, you're hanging out with other people that are willing to do the same. And that's kind of what we curated for our mastermind here. We didn't want it to be a low ticket item. We wanted it to be a high ticket item because we wanted to draw in the right people. We wanted people to understand that, one connection can make you $100,000 very easily if you make the right connection. But if you're hanging out with great people, you might not find it. But if you're hanging out with elite people, they come very fast and they come very quickly. And that's something that I've found is when you invest into masterminds, when you invest into yourself and you start playing with the elites, man, one introduction can lead to a $100,000 transaction or deal or, product overnight very easily, where you don't really find as many of those connections in maybe a smaller space. So by playing in that elite space, you never know what's going to happen. It might not be today. You might have to be a part of something for a few years, but all of a sudden now, 8 years later, I'm reaching back on some of those friends that I met that are elite connections. And I'm like, oh, these connections are still paying dividends years and years and years and years later. It's impossible to monetize or like track the monetization of it. But the elites, hanging out with the elites, great things happen when you put them together.
Well, and you don't even feel the need to track the monetization because there's just so much happening, so much abundance that's around you. It's abound in, it's almost like it's in the air when you get to have those conversations. Right before we started this podcast, we were having a great collaborative conversation with a collaboration that we're working together on. That's going to be, in my opinion, an absolute game changer. And that came from an introduction founded through similar organizations like Strategic Coach. Us getting connected through Justin Breen, who's been on our show before, who's an amazing connector. Shout out to Justin, is all about being able to build and create those powerful relationships with people. And we've met some of the most amazing individuals simply because of that one connection born out of a virtual Strategic Coach event through 3 years ago. So you just never know when something's going to come up like that. And I'm so glad that you shared all those things. And I'm guessing somewhere along the line, that's what brings you to this visionary idea of how much you want to be able to not just give yourself, but to create an environment, create an enhanced capacity for others to give. So tell us a little bit about what bore the Go Big to Give brand, what brought on the idea of the podcast and the community that you're building there.
Yeah, absolutely. It got brought on from the sense of getting caught up in the capitalist world, playing the game of the hustle culture and working so hard to try and chase financial freedom at 30. I lost one of my best friends when I was 25 years old. He was 42. And I realized, like, man, there's so much more to this life than just trying to work until you're 50 and want to retire. And so after he passed away, I Googled how to make a ton of money, never work again. I had this goal to retire by the time I was 30. I built a successful real estate investment company. I hustled and grinded and ended up working myself into a non-epileptic seizure and putting myself in the hospital because I wasn't taking care of my body. I was working too hard. I was too stressed out, and I was trying to chase that financial freedom number. When I came out, I heard a podcast with a guy named 𝙒𝙗𝙧𝙚, and this statement stuck with me forever. He said, if you want to make $1 million a year, build a business that does 2 million, give $1 million away and be the happiest millionaire on the planet. And I was like, ooh, that's good. And in the season I was in, that's what I needed to hear. So I decided to build a giving component into all of our revenue stuff. So at the time we had a monthly meetup and it was free. And we said, well, this is easy. What if we just charged $10 at the door, but made it a donation to charity? And we had about 30 people on a monthly basis. And so we were donating about $300 a month. Well, once we added that component to it, and we were helping people understand the value of giving, we stood at the front of the room and we said, look, guys, there's 30 of you here. We just helped one kid go through organized sport this month. We want to help 2 kids go through organized sport next month, which means we need 60 people in here to make a $600 donation. Who do you know that would want to come be a part of our mission? Well, next thing you know, we scaled that to 60, 90, 120 people, and we were supporting 4 kids on a monthly basis through our meetup. It costs us nothing. It made them accountable to come because they made the donation. And when people pay, they pay attention. And so they would show up. Well, next thing you know, I started understanding this concept that when there's a purpose, when there's an impact component to stuff, people generally want to be more involved in it. But I was more inspired to grow it. When it was free and for serving us, it was okay. I didn't put a lot of attention and time and effort to it. When it was for the kids, and I started thinking about how many kids I could help get through sport every single month by just putting more people in that room, I got excited again. And the burnout that I had and that exhaustion that I created for myself chasing financial freedom changed when I realized it became about the impact I can make in the world, not about how much money I could have. So we took that. Yeah.
You just hit the nail right on the head. And because and we've mentioned this countless times, so many people are chasing financial freedom without ever realizing that it wasn't money that they were really after.
Yeah.
The impact. And what comes up for me, what I hear, think about this. This is going to be good. For the first time ever, live on Wealth Without Bay Street. Go big, give bigger.
Yeah, I love that, dude.
Isn't that good?
That's it. And that's 100% where the idea came from. So we took that same principle of like, the bigger we go, the more we can give, go big to give bigger, all these concepts, right? And we put them into our real estate portfolio. So we started donating $10 per door per month from our real estate portfolio. Our 5-plex donates $50 a month, or 10-plex donates $100 a month, and so on and so on. What became that mission again was that I started thinking bigger. I was like, man, I don't want to buy duplexes and triplexes anymore, because that's only $20 or $30 a month I can donate. If I can go buy a 20, 30, 40, 50 unit building, now we're able to start making some impact with that. When you speak in those terms, people want to be a part of what you're creating. When I go around and say, hey, I want to go buy a 20 unit building, people are like, oh, yeah, it must be nice to be able to afford something like that. When I go around and say, hey, I'm going to buy 20 units because it means we can donate $200 a month and put one kid through organized sport every single month that you're a part of investing into this building, people are like, take my money. And that's how we were able to scale and grow our business so fast, because we had that purpose and impact on the back end that drove us to think bigger, but it allowed all of our investors to come in and want to be a part of the impact we were making. And people just felt like they want to be a part of something bigger than what they were just already involved in. So that's the whole principle of Go Big to Give Big, came from the real estate investing side of the world, where we realized that the more doors we could buy, the more kids we could help. The more people we put in our meetup, the more kids we could help. The more money we made, the more we could help. And now I wasn't chasing financial freedom for myself. I was chasing the impact for how many kids that we can put through sport.
That's incredible. And I'm glad that your moniker isn't Go Big, Give Back Bigger, because you didn't take anything.
That's funny. You just said that. I just had Bob Berg on my podcast from The Go Giver. I don't know if you've ever read that book before.
Oh, yeah.
And he came on my podcast, and that's exactly what he shared. He said, I don't actually like the term giving back, because that means you've had to have taken something first. What you do is just giving. You just purely give because that makes you feel good. And you give because you didn't have to take something first. And so I love that principle and concept. When he explained that to me, I was like, that's it. That's the new way of giving. It's not giving back. It's just giving in general.
And think about this. So Rich has a lot of, history and experience as well in the real estate, investment space, as do I. And what excites you most about that? Like, what gets you pumped about the function of real estate investment?
Yeah, real estate investing is just, well, when you read this stat that says like 80% of all millionaires, 90% of all millionaires are made through real estate. You read that stat and you're like, okay, cool. I just got to do real estate. Like it's becomes just a common staple and principle. But when you actually start diving into it, just the diversity that you can get inside of real estate. You can go for cash flow. You can go for principal recapture. You can go for appreciation. You can go for, short-term rentals. You can go into land development. You can become a builder. You can do so many different faucets inside real estate investing, but still have the same core principles of what you're trying to achieve with it. So again, there's making money, there's building wealth, there's creating cash flow, there's building retirement. And so if you start learning real estate on every different level, you can go flip houses to make money, to then go buy apartment buildings to build cash flow. And then you can take that cash flow and go buy assets, some rich dad, poor dad thinking there. And then you can take those assets and go have the best time of your life. And those are some of the key principles. And, at a young age, I bought a house and I learned very quickly that you can make very easy money and very quickly in real estate, and was able to go buy a rental property with one of my best friends. And we use that rental property to this day to pay for us to go fishing. So the cash flow we make from that rental property pays for us to go fishing. Well, now we have to go fishing because we have no excuse, because a lot of the times like, oh, we can't afford it. Now like, we got to spend this money from our property because we saved it for fishing. So there's a lot of really cool things that come from real estate, more than just buying doors and building wealth. It's what you can actually do with the money and the different ways you can play in it. There's no easier way to make a few $100,000 than buying some properties and flipping it or sitting on it or watching it grow, especially at a young age.
Well, and with all that being said, there's also the other side of the coin, which is sometimes the best laid plans don't always work out for us. And I know I was sharing earlier, I did a webinar last night and shared a couple 2x4 moments where things didn't always go my way, and some of that in the real estate game. So I'm curious, when have you seen real estate come up where it hasn't necessarily done exactly what we were hoping for? The projections, the things that we try to do didn't always line up. And sometimes whether it was a market condition or something other that happened, maybe with a partnership, what's an example of that where it's come up for you, Randy? And then how would you suggest to people? Because today there is a lot of dynamic change happening, at least in Canada, certainly I think in North America wide, around in general real estate, financing of the real estate, the interest rate environment. So what are some tips that you would share with people when you're faced with a scenario that maybe isn't as robust as you're hoping it once was, and you have to overcome some of those challenges?
Yeah, you got 3 hours to finish this podcast because I got a lot of those stories. So I'm just kidding. That's the honest truth, man. It's like, I think being part of an entrepreneur is getting hit by that 2x4 and then having to adjust and pivot. And so, I'm going through one right now where my partner and I that bought that house to go pay for fishing, we both wanted to liquidate. We've had a lot of fun with it. We had some equity. We just watched prices skyrocket on homes last year. We had people offering us $950,000 and we're like, do we want to sell? Maybe not. We took our time. And at the beginning of this year, we're like, you know what? Let's liquidate it. Let's sell it. So we thought we were going to be ahead of the market. We listed it for $890,000. We're like, we're below 900 where we were getting offers. We're going to liquidate it fast. We kicked our tenants out, so we had no revenue coming in. And we're like, let's go. 3 months goes by, 50 showings, no offers. 4 months goes by, another 10 showings, no offers. We drop our price to 850. We drop our price to 820. And then just a few weeks ago, we dropped our price to 790. No offers. And so now we're sitting here carrying a mortgage, carrying a property. We kicked our tenants out to sell it. Now we can't sell it. Do we want to sell it? When you're talking about 950 and then you drop down to below 800, losing 150 grand in 4 or 5 months, it's surreal. You're like, whew, split that like $75,000. Hey guys, would you have $75,000 in the bank today? Or would you not? It's like, that's a tough pill to swallow. And so now we're in a tough position where do we liquidate it further to get rid of it since it's empty and vacant? Do we put tenants in it? Because then all of a sudden you're in that challenge where you have to sell a property that's tenanted again. And so it is stressful, putting up money every single month for something that you don't know what you're doing it with. I'm with a partner on that property. So it's not just my choice of if I want to put a tenant in it. He had already spent his money on a different, he was renovating his house and he's like, I'm going to take all my money and I'm going to build this gorgeous kitchen. Well, now his kitchen's not getting built because we can't sell the house. So real life in that scenario is challenging. And we have to make some very hard decisions. And we don't even know what we're doing. Like literally, like I have to go to the property tomorrow and go mow the lawns and clean it up because we still don't know if we're going to sell it, if we're going to rent it. Nobody wants to rent it because they know we're going to sell it in the new year again, probably. It's a disaster. So that's one example right there of like the real life trauma that I'm facing. Like everyone's like, oh, it must be so nice to own a house. Yeah, it's so nice until you want to sell it and you can't sell it and you want to rent it, but nobody will rent it. And it's costing you a few $1,000s a month. And you have to deal with all the trauma and headache and BS that goes with it and your friendship and everything. There's a lot of stress and a lot of stuff going on for one single family home that I thought was going to sell for $950,000 a year ago.
Those are the things that don't show up on the pro forma when you're looking at the next real estate deal. And what I've found is that spreadsheets don't do a very good job of bringing in the emotional aspect. And, you identified the partnership, friendship. And when you're getting deep involved in the real estate game, eventually you run to a point where you need to start bringing in joint venture partners. You need to start, you need to do things with other people, investors in some category. It's a relationship business. And what a lot of times I think people who don't realize is how much pressure someone who's leading the charge on acquisition and management of the real estate is put under when they've got other people that they're responsible to, and the market condition shifts and change, there's a lot on your back to try to make sure that you can do the best to make sure that your investors, your joint venture partners are looked after. And sometimes the market condition doesn't make that easy. In fact, it makes it extremely difficult.
Especially, in my actual business, as my personal life, in my actual business, we raised, quite a bit of significant capital in early 2019 into 2020, and we bought 4 development properties. Well, I'm sure you can read that story of how that's gone, right?
It was a little bit of a lumber spike, I think, during that period of time, wasn't there?
Yeah. And a little bit of a labor shortage and a little bit of interest rate dropping to 0, and then interest rates dropping, and then interest rates rising to 8%. And it's absolutely wild. And, we went from, I'll be transparent, we went from making about $40,000 or $50,000 a month in fees on the projects to watching them come to a screeching halt and making $0 because our investors are sitting there going, well, you can't get paid if this project isn't going to finish on time and on budget. Your timeline's just expanded a year. Your budgets just went up 200%. All of our profits gone. And you guys think you can get paid? Nope, that doesn't work. So, when you're budgeted and projecting to be doing $40,000 to $50,000 a month because of these fees, and you're building your team and you're scaling, and then all of a sudden that goes to 0, and you're like, woof. Now what do you do? That's a game changer. And that was probably one of the hardest things as an entrepreneur in life, to realize, like, man, real estate doesn't just go up. Things can happen out of the blue. Things are challenging, but as a business owner, that can happen to anybody, right? You can lose your sales tomorrow. So what's your backup strategies? Where are you getting other sources of revenue to help not just one area? We were very, very heavy into that one area. And so when that one income stream got pulled, it was panic mode. What do? We have no money. We need to finish these projects. All of our time's still going on it. And how do we go make more money? We can't just go start a new business because we are trying to finish the one that we're in. And so, there's a lot of challenges we faced in that space. I don't want to go too deep into it because that's a whole gauntlet of stuff that we can get into. But as a business owner, that's a challenge. And that wasn't anything we could control. That was 100% a fluke thing that only happens once in so long, that you hit this absolute huge crash where we had no control. We did everything right. Our performance were 100%. They were very conservative. Everything was, very projected along the way. Our investors were supposed to be making 20 to 25%. And we were supposed to be making about the same. We're like, man, there's 40% returns there before we even have to start thinking about, losses. Well, now we have to start having some of those conversations. Timelines have gone up, construction, all that stuff. And that wasn't because we were bad operators. Just the market changed and caused us to be in this situation. So you can be the best real estate investor in the world, but you can't predict what's going to come down the pipeline.
That's very true. And regardless of the business, I'll tell you, one of the things that we've found so incredibly valuable is embracing continuing capital surplus reserves. And so to give you an example of that, hopefully this is helpful. You may already be doing this, but we take a percentage of every gross revenue dollar and we set it aside as a continuing capital surplus reserve. So when if I take you back to March of 20, when was it?
2020.
We're imminent. So we're back in March of 2020. We're sitting down with our team, and we knew that lockdowns were imminent. And I was trying to think, how do I show up for my team in a way that is going to be absolutely truthful and authentic and reassuring? And one of the things that I could immediately fall back on was our capital surplus reserves. And so I shared with our teammates, I said, look, some of you are in fear, some of you are in anger, some of you are in a combination of both, because there's an absence of control. We don't know what really the fallout's going to be. I'm not in either one of those lanes. And I want to help address this with you by letting you know we have enough continuing capital surplus reserves to keep the lights on if we did no business from this date in March in 2020 to this date in March 2021. If we didn't do one lick of business, everybody who's on the team today is going to be on the team today a year from now. So let's take that worry and alleviate it so we can focus on serving the people.
And I'm so glad that we did a bit of that.
Doubled that year.
Oh, that's huge. And that's huge. If you can stay in the game. I mean, we have a principle of delayed gratification. You know, we easily could have taken out massive paychecks from the company the previous year, done stuff. And we did a similar thing of like, let's just get through these developments. You never know what's going to happen. The more cash we have in the bank, the better we are. And so we chose the principle of delayed gratification that, hey, if we stack those reserves, keep our modest salaries, and do what we have to do. And also when you're working with investors, if something like this does happen and you're driving around in a Ferrari and they're looking at their returns go down, it's not a very good look. So we did reserve us, and that allowed us to make decisions that weren't panicking. Right? Yeah. We didn't have to make panic decisions of, holy smokes, what's the next move this month? We knew we had the ability to keep the lights on. You know, we did a few things like, hey, you know what? We should go work from home instead of the office. We don't need the office anymore. Let's just get out of that payment. Let's do some other things to make sure that our reserves go even longer than we had anticipated. But then you also listen to Grant Cardone, and Grant Cardone says, you know, when everyone is contracting, you should be expanding. So then it's this hard game of like, this one thing is contracting, but where can we go expand in other places? And that's where we tripled down on our mastermind and said, you know what? I like this idea of, if the world's going into a bunch of kerfuffle and troubles and people don't know what to do, what's the one thing they're going to want? They're going to want to bounce ideas off each other and have a support system. So that's when we tripled down on building our mastermind, because we knew that there was going to be so much need for support in this. And we didn't know what it looked like. We didn't know if it was in person, online, or what it looked like. But what we knew, we said, if we put 20 of the top business minds or real estate minds together, we can survive these problems together better. And so when everyone was contracting and very nervous, we were expanding and trying to grow this high ticket, high caliber mastermind, which we launched in the middle of the pandemic in 2020. And so you can imagine trying to run an event and put people together and everything in there. Lo and behold, 3 years later, we're top mastermind in Canada. It's high ticket item. We've got 75 plus members now. We do 3 events a year all over Canada and 1 international event, and this huge thing. So oftentimes in some of the worst situations, great things can be birthed from it or come from it, as long as you don't have to operate from, oh my God, where's my next dollar coming tomorrow?
Precisely.
It's amazing the shift that it can make. And, you know, the thing is that not everyone understands that that's the case until they've gone through that experience. They've either felt it somewhere along the line, or they've witnessed it closely with someone maybe that they know and see. And one of the key advantages I think that we have is, if we're looking for it and we're aware, we're open, and we're thinking about, okay, where is there a lesson for me to take? And often the lesson can be not just from within, but it can be from your surroundings. And if you recognize and see what's happening for other people, things that aren't going the way that you would, geez, I'd probably choose to do that differently. Or I see what happened over there based on that decision-making process. Maybe I'll take a different track for myself. You have the ability to glean these insights and then start to implement them in your own actions. And I think fundamentally, what's one of the advantages of having you on the program today, Randy, is that you're able to share some of these stories, some of the hardships that have come to you, the 2x4s that have hit, not including the floor, which is kind of like a 2x4 that you landed on before our podcast started. But these are the lessons and stories that I think not only help inspire people, but help them recognize, look, you're not a lone wolf out there. You might be experiencing challenges in your own life, but no one is able to, bypass those things. We all experience them in some way. It's how we deal with those experiences when they show up that really makes a difference. And so if you take anything from this episode today, it's really recognizing that you have an ability to show up and make decisions, and you're empowered to make those decisions. And you can take these kind of inspirational conversations to use as a guide along the way and along the path. So love that and appreciate that.
And so I'll transition a little bit for you here into something that came to me. So as I was going through a lot of these challenging times, I was being very called to step into Go Big to Give Big at the time. Didn't know what that meant, but I knew, real estate was challenging. The mastermind was growing and challenging at the same time, but I was being very called to go into this thing called Go Big to Give Big, and, launching the podcast and all this. And one of the things that I remembered is that sometimes you need to get a little bit more grittier, a little bit more challenged. You need to step into, getting away from complacency. And so one of the things that I did is I signed up for a challenge called 29029 Everesting. And so for anyone that's in Canada, we went to Whistler and we hiked up Whistler and gondolaed down 8 times for the equivalent height of 29,029 feet, which is the height of Mount Everest. And it was it's an organized event. There's about 250 people there. And it was in those moments where I found a whole different side of myself. It was, when you were just talking about, getting through some of the pains and struggles, and you have to find a different gear, you have to do things differently. I used physical fitness to prove to myself that I was harder than and better working than any of the challenges that I was going to face. Right. I might be struggling over here, but I'm still gritty. I still got this, elite mentality inside of me where I'm going to go to that mountain and nobody can stop me from the efforts that I'm going to put out. And so I hiked all the way through that entire event, 23 hours straight, didn't stop, and ended up finishing like third of 250 people because I hiked through the night. I finished at 3:45 in the morning, freezing cold on the top of Whistler in October. And it was in those moments where I found something different inside of me. It was like, you know what, when everyone says the bar is here and it can't be done and that's where it is, I went to go prove that I could set my personal bar higher. And that's when I started getting into like ultra running a little bit and finding more challenges. I ended up doing David Goggins 4x4x48 challenge, 4 miles every 4 hours for 48 hours. I just went and ran 28K trail runs. Like, I'm starting to use the physical fitness world to remind myself of how capable I am of pushing myself further than I think. And then I relay that back into business where I'm starting to build a new program in Go Big to Give Big called the Fractional Chief Giving Officer, where we go and build all of the giving initiatives for organizations. And so it's never been done before. Maybe it's been done, but I haven't found an organization that's built a consulting company like I'm doing. I've had so many people tell me it's not possible. I've had so many people tell me we're in a recession. Nobody's going to pay for you to come in and run their impact. It's a high ticket item. But here I am with this elite attitude going, yeah, that's what you think, but you're not talking to the people I'm talking to. You're not talking to the people that are making more money now than they ever have before in the middle of a recession. You're not talking to the people that actually care more about the impact they want to make in this world than the money they have in their bank account. And they'd rather hire someone to do that stuff. So that's how I'm correlating now the endurance side of my life of pushing myself to a new brink, so that when I go into the business side, it's like, you know what? I am a little bit more above than the average person thinks or knows because I'm pushing myself harder and I can achieve more. So just wanted to share that as for your audience as well, is that when things get tough in business, you don't have to try and grit out business. You can go grit out your personal life and find a new level for yourself and then bring it back into the business space.
That is, there are several sharp examples of that when you surround yourself with elite people.
Yeah.
And so when you look at the mastermind that you've got going on, your impact initiative, the just the people that you're surrounding yourself with, and then you look at the function of real estate investing, you've got all these great things going on, but what is bringing you the most energy?
The most energy right now is this concept from a mutual friend of ours, Mark Fujiwara. And one of the things he taught me was that when you understand what your energy is and what makes you happy, you can start relating that to other scenarios. And so here's what he did. He told me, go into your calendar and everything that you do, rate it energetically how you leave that. -2, -1, 0, +1, +2. So I was going through my calendar and finding other things, and I would leave a phone call or a meeting and I'd be like, oh, I just feel deflated. -1. Talk to somebody else. I'm like, that person's not something I want in my life. -2. And then I'd have a conversation with someone. I'm like, that's a +2. I want more of that. Well, what I found is there's a direct correlation to the things that I love doing, which is Go Big to Give Big right now on the podcast. And, every podcast episode is a +2 for me. Well, if it's a +2, record more episodes. If it's, talking to people about giving back, do more of that. Real estate's challenging me a bit, maybe in the minuses. Well, maybe do less of that. Step back from it a little bit. So I'm actually giving my partner in the real estate space a lot more of the reins to the company and saying, I'm actually finding myself more excited over here. But it's also about the people that I'm meeting. When I talk to +2 people, they introduced me to +2 people. And so when Justin Breen introduces me to Richard and says, this is a +2 human, I just know it's +2 because when I talk to Justin, it's +2. So +2 people introduce you to +2 people. -1 and -2 people will introduce you to -1 and -2s. So when you take that principle and concept into your life for everything you do, I only hang out and play in +1, +2 all day. If I don't like recording podcasts, +2, this is a +2 moment for me. I love you guys. I'm having fun. My energy's great. I only try and do things that are +2s in my life now. And if it's not serving me, and I rate everything still every day as I go through it, and if it gets to be -1 or -2, I look at how do I leave it? How do I exit it? How do I not talk to that person anymore? And there's 100% direct correlation that the -1s in my life that were there, every time they made an introduction to me was to another -1 or -2. I couldn't get away from it.
Yeah.
+1s and +2s, only +1s and +2s. And I live the best day of your life. I just talk to the most amazing entrepreneurs in the world that are game changers, elite people, because I'm an elite person that want to do really good stuff, that care more about impact, that care more about income. And they just keep introducing me to more of the same types of people. And it's just driving me to do that. So I don't know if that directly answers what you're asking there, but this energy that gets created is you don't leave a conversation feeling worse than when you went in. I feel better leaving every conversation.
Yeah, and shout out to Mark. He's a great guy. He sent me one of the most amazing gratitude videos a couple of weeks back, and it was incredible. He's an amazing human being. I like him a lot.
We're gonna do some big things together. We've probably had 10 phone calls this week about a really cool giving initiative around mental health that we're gonna launch and do some really cool stuff. But again, it's all been +2. Like it's like anytime we chat to each other, we leave it and we text each other going like +3. Like that's just a different level of energy we're getting leaving these conversations that him and I are talking about wanting to build this really cool giving initiative that he had an idea for, and I'm helping execute on it. And it's just those kinds of conversations. I'm like, I want more, dude. Mark, call me more. And so we just like end up having more and more conversations because I just feel so inspired leaving them that it's not about the amount of work I do in a day. It's the amount of productivity that I get done. And my productivity goes through the roof when I'm super energetic and excited about what I'm doing, as opposed to miserable and grumpy about it.
So a couple of key takeaways from that, for our listeners and viewers, that if you find yourself in an energy draining environment, you have the ability to control the environment that you not only enter, but that you decide to stay in or get out of. And finding your unique ability, I think, is super important as well. And that's a whole philosophy that was born out of the strategic coach program. Shout out to all the strategic coach folks who are just incredible. Dan Sullivan in particular. Recognize that discovering your unique ability is one thing, and then determining, okay, what activities personally, professionally, am I going to amplify and do more of in my life because it draws out more of my unique ability, it fascinates me, it energizes me, and how am I going to systematically get rid of people, processes, initiatives, projects, the list goes on, the things in my life that are energy draining, because someone else, what frustrates you may be fascinating and energizing to someone else.
100%.
And then, but when you establish your criteria of these are the who's that I will associate with in my life, and these are the people who do not possess the optimum mindsets of those who I most love to surround myself with and serve and help. Boy, the progress that you achieve in your life, it accelerates so much faster, because you could just, like, you lit up like a Christmas tree when you started talking about how you've gone into your calendar and you're assigning these degrees of -1, +2. Get rid of all that negative stuff. It's not serving you, and it's definitely not serving the person on the other end of it.
Yeah, and I'm probably a -2 to the people that think I'm a -2. I'm a different energy. I'm a visionary entrepreneur. I have no time for people that want to talk about, you know, the nuts and bolts of tiny little things. Like, come on, let's move on from that conversation. I'm already bored. Like, let's go. I'm probably a -2 to a lot of people in this world. But that's what I got clear on, was like, I don't have to be a +2 to everybody. I have to be a +2 to the +2s, right? To my circle of influence. And so I just love the simplicity of it. I'm a very simple human. and anybody can do it, and build your own circle of plus twos. And then you don't have to worry about anything else going on. And you'll only get, like I said, introduced to people that are very similar to yourself and want to do the same things that you want to do. And I even took it further. And in my Go Big to Give Big, I just hired an executive assistant. And I said, you know what? I've worked so hard on hiring based on the principles of their resumes and what they've done. I'm like, I'm going to hire this person on the single principle of plus two. So I did 5 or 6 interviews, and I asked questions and did what you're supposed to do. And I brought the right people in, make sure they're skilled. But I just trusted my gut and said, after every interview, I just put -1, -2, 0, +1, +2. And I found one person that was a +2. And I was like, I just loved talking to that girl. She was great energy. She had all the right things. I was like, her qualifications weren't as strong as people in the field. I was like, you're hired. She's like, what? And I was like, I don't need anything more. I'm just going to hire you based on this principle that you're a +2 in my life. She's like, sure. I don't even know what you're talking about. And I hired her. She's been amazing. She matches my energy. She gets it. We get along great. We can talk. You know, she understands some of the principles that are going on in my life versus someone who maybe more qualified, but I would butt heads with all day long, be hard to work with. So I'm trying these new principles out everywhere in my life, even in hiring, where it's not about the qualifications they have. It's about this person's working beside me 24/7. They have to be able to handle my energy and know my principles and core values of who I only hang out with. And she fits that role. So she's learning the skills very easily as long as she fits good into my +2 life.
It's incredible. That's the one thing about this mastermind that you've created. When you enter a mastermind group and your gives are bigger than your asks, you truly leave with a mastermind.
That's it.
See, Rich, I knew Rich would like that one.
I'm like, how many episodes have you been waiting to throw that in there? Is what
I know.
I'm curious
It's just been lingering there. Just waiting for the right opportunity to let that out. But yeah, see, this is what happens when elite people hang out together.
Well, we've absolutely loved having you on the program, Randy. This is incredible. So much wonderful value. Love all the different initiatives that you're doing and how all those initiatives are tied to something much bigger than yourself, having a future that is much greater, much brighter than your past, something that we resonate with here. And so, you know, as we think about and reflect on everything that you shared with us today, my question for you is, as you consider what your future holds and what you're going and setting about to do, who would you say you most want to be a hero to?
There's 2 things to that. One, I'm a big family man. I don't have kids yet, but I'm going to have kids. And part of what I want to build now is that I want my kids to see that anything's possible. I want them to believe that they can go out and challenge the status quo, challenge the norm, and go after different things. So that's one of them. But the one that's driving me today, because I don't have kids, is I want to set the example for entrepreneurship and capitalism. Like, I want capitalism to be gone, where you build a business and all you do is make money. Well, those days are gone. Why would you care so much about making money and not about making impact in this world? So I really want to set a standard for what entrepreneurship looks like. And I want to be a role model to all the new kids coming out of school that are building businesses. I can't change an old person, can't change an old dog to do new tricks. I understand that. But what I can do is set the example for what new entrepreneurs are looking like, and that creating some element of impact or social responsibility or giving back inside your business, like it's just a common principle. Like, that's just how you build a business. It's not like, oh, I'm special because I added a giving component. It's like, oh, you don't have one? Eugh, why would anyone ever buy your product or service? That just doesn't make sense to me. That's the world that I'm trying to create. And one of the +2 conversations I had with a guy walked me through that, where he said, Randy, what you're doing is really cool, but how are you going to make generational impact? You need to start working with kids in high schools and middle schools now, so that as they come out of school, the only principle they know is that business is done to do good in the world. And because you do good in the world, you can get paid as much as you want. That is the theory that I want to recreate and make and inspire people with. So that's kind of my answer to that one, is I really want to leave an imprint on entrepreneurship to the newer generation, to see that business can be done completely differently than the way we've done it in the past.
Oh, that's terrific.
Excellent.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for being with us, Randy. And this was a great conversation. say hi to Mark for us, say hi to Justin for us, and to all our viewers and listeners. You just saw the next video show up in the playlist that we've recommended to you. There's a reason we recommended it. There's no destination or landing spot as it relates to your knowledge. So continue your journey of learning. Watch that next video that we've recommended to you. Guys, have an outstanding rest of your week. And we're going to include some links in the show notes so that viewers, listeners, will provide you with those details so you can get better acquainted with Randy. And Randy, go big, give big-er.
I love it, gentlemen. Thank you so much for having me on the show. It's been a ton of fun, and I look forward to continuing some +2 conversations with you guys.